Legends Among Us Part 1. 2 months and 2 days after the initiation. The day smelled like rain, though it had been sunny for the last 2 days ever since the legendaries arrived. The ground was still drying though, and Ash was still trying to get his mind around what exactly just had happened. As he sat on a tree near Anabel's house, he tried to register all what Anabel and Nolan told him. Frontier brains, they were required to befriend and train legendary Pokémon. This all just overwhelmed him. Without a doubt, Ash knew that he has had more experience with legendaries than the average person, and possibly more than most Pokémon scientists, but all those experiences taught him was the misuse of Pokémon's powers. With the Masked Hunter, Team Rocket, Magma, Aqua and Galaxy. All these people sought to gain and control legendary Pokémon and only ended up making things worse. How could even he, a 14-year-old kid, be worthy of handling that power? It just wasn't right. Trapped within the rummage of his mind, he was unaware of one battle brain watching him. Anabel looked at the boy in the tree with a concern in her eyes that didn't quite suit her. Then again, neither did Ash's own face of worry suit him either. For once the Salon Maiden was at a loss of words. She didn't know any advice to give him. Yet due to the fact she was unable to help drove Anabel crazy. It became clear to the purpose why Nolan arrived here at the same time the Raikou and NT came. The Battle Factory head came to observe and report back to Scott if Ash was ready for the final test. Of course there was no real proof of this rather than just female intuition, but that hasn't failed her yet. So Anabel left Ash to his musings. Not wishing to interfere with his personal choice of what he should do. As his mentor, all Anabel could do is encourage him to follow his heart. Meanwhile, she had talk about Nolan or a few things. Anabel was joined by her 3 cats on her way. Her faithful Espeon, and the 2 giant shadows of NT and Raikou following the human they deemed worthy. They found Nolan in a clearing behind her house tinkering with his favorite plane. He had flown it to Trojan Falls during the storm, and unsurprisingly some parts needed to get cleaned before the factory head could fly again. The older man had already sensed them coming and was unaffected by Anabel's stern gaze. "Hey little sis, what's up?" he asked oh so innocently. The Salon Maiden cut to the chase. "Why did Scott decided to send you?" It wasn't her intent to sound rude, but she knew Nolan enough not to beat around the bush. Sheepishly Nolan scratched the back of his head. "Nothing ever gets past you, does it, Anabel?" He stood up to full height, coming closer to talk. He gestured to the woods behind him. "Come on, let's walk." Anabel looked at him sternly. "Promise me you're not going to bail." "Brain's honor," he said, putting his hand on his chest. They walked slowly and quietly, content to listen to the chirping of the local bug-type Pokémon before Nolan said, "He's certainly grown a lot." Anabel snapped out of her daze made by the silence. "Who, Ash?" Nolan grinned. "Who else?" He put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You've done an awesome job, little sis." At this Anabel couldn't help but smile. "Thank you. But I still want answers." Right. Nolan grinned sheepishly again. "Well, obviously Scott wanted the 411 on you guys and see your progress. I plan on reporting to him tomorrow. And obviously," he paused before sighing, "to see if Ash was ready to take his final exam. To befriend and capture an legendary Pokémon." "Exactly." Nolan went on. "And judging by Ash's reaction, I assume he has encountered his fair share of legendaries. And also judging how he is acting now, I can assume that he has had a first-hand experience of the misuse of a legendary Pokémon's power." Anabel added on. "Which is why he is very unsure if he wants to do this, despite of being more than capable." Esp. Rare. ARRRR. The 3 Pokémon behind the humans agreed. Nolan turned to Anabel with an inquisitive look to his eyes. "So do you have a plan to help him change?" Anabel looked away in disappointment. Disappointment in herself. "For once, no." Nolan looked sympathetic. "Then I guess we'll have to do this the Ash Ketchum way then." He winked at Anabel. "We believe in wing it. Pika. Pika. Pika." Ash stopped his musings to look at Pikachu sitting on his knees. The electric type was rather put out that his trainer has been so quiet lately and has been trying to find some way to get Ash moving again. Pikachu knew easily that Ash was worried about the legendary factor, and he knew why Ash was worried about because Pikachu there himself had been at all those Rouge Legendaries events. Yet still, to Pikachu's mind that shouldn't be a reason to be so solemn. Ash smiled at Pikachu knowing that his buddy was trying to help. Sorry Pikachu, but this is something I gotta decided on my own. The trainer sighed, letting his legs hang off the tree. Don't let me stop ya. Ash smiled. Go and have some fun, looks like they would like to play with you. To Pikachu's surprise, there was Jed's Spinda and Anabel's Absol. Both were looked up to Pikachu expectingly. A quick nod of approval from his trainer, Pikachu leapt off the tree to go play. Ash watched as the three wandered off somewhere in the meadows before he let himself go back to his musings. Man, this tanks. He did a smile that was more akin to a grimace. You would think that learning to become a frontier brain would require more battling than thinking, but he stayed quiet for a while. How could he, a simple trainer, go out to handle a legendary Pokémon? Ash, though with good amount of decent skill, wasn't anything special. He was just an average kid who just hung around with his Pokémon. Never had this thought of capturing a legendary ever crossed his mind. Truly, this shook him down to his spine of commanding the power. He was just a kid, right? But I'm not a kid anymore. Our hero looked down to his hands, realizing just how much more calloused and larger than they were a few months ago. Everything was changing. Ash thought to himself. Including me. He realized that he was no longer the same boy who first came here in the back of Staraptor. He was older, taller and much more, stronger. In what? He asked himself. In his battles, in thinking, in communicating with his Pokémon. What had truly radically changed? Anabel. The thought came to him, causing our hero's checks to rise to a red tint. Yes, that had drastically changed him in how he viewed girls. And people in general. It was a lot easier to just see people and just chat and relate to them. He didn't have to be best friends with a person in order to get to know them or cheer them up, a quick good morning would suffice. Seeing trainers in the battle tower wave back and laugh before they challenged other trainers really made a large difference for them. Anabel helped him with that in his Pokémon. What else had changed? Ash thought again. Everything. No, I still want to fulfill my dream of becoming the greatest Pokémon master. He gazed outward. It's just that the path is changing. So many elements and variables that popped up in his life. Even the meaning of being a Pokémon master had changed. It wasn't simply of having the most Pokémon or having the strongest. So what was a Pokémon master? Yo, hotshot, what's the weather up there like? A voice came from below. It was Jed. The aura philosopher looked like he just came from a walk. His jacket and hat were missing. Probably inside his satchel he was carrying. It was a hot day after all. Hey, Ash said, caught surprise. What are you doing here? Jed smiled. Just walking. But hey, want to do some training? Haven't we done this yesterday? Ash asked gruffly. Jed smirked. Don't disobey sensei. The elder teen laughed at Ash's miffed face. The two boys walked to their normal training area. There were a few stray bug and flying Pokémon here and there, but none were really in the way. Alright. So basic controlling techniques? Ash asked, flexing his hands, getting his aura pumped. Jed had been drilling techniques about how to properly control and maintain aura for extended amount of times. But it was all so boring. So it surprised Ash to hear Jed say no. What do you mean? He asked, very curious now. Jed sighed before clapping his hands. Today, we learn Aura Sphere. Ash nearly leapt in excitement. Really? No joke. The aura philosopher nodded. No joke. This is the cool stuff Ash had been waiting for since he met Jed. Finally they would learn all sorts of techniques and moves about aura. How awesome would it be to be like Riley? Ash was so excited that he didn't catch the saddened glance that Jed cast towards the trainer. Where do we begin? Our hero asked, barely able to stand still now. Jed quickly smiled. Alright, get into stance. Jed bent his knees slightly, one foot slightly behind the other with both elbows tucked in. Ash did the same. This was the stance that is the easiest for beginners to start controlling their aura. If Ash remember right, Jed said it was something about nerve endings and open passages ways and things like that. Obviously our hero wasn't listening too intently to that lecture. But this time his ears were all too eager to hear. Jed demonstrated right in front of him. Alright. Focus as usual, but this time circulate it through your arms mostly. Jed had several more steps, but his mind went numb seeing Ash already forming the aura sphere and allowed it to grow perfect size. The white-haired man observed it looking for any flaws, any wavering aura, too small, too large, unfocused core. No, it was indeed perfect. Ash grinned with glee. Wow, Jed, I got it. He held it up closer to his face to inspect his handiwork. This is really cool. Can you disperse it? Sure can. Ash stopped the flow easily and the aura sphere faded into non-existence. What can we learn next? Ash asked, looking up to the philosopher expectantly. At first it looked like Jed was going to say something when opening his mouth, but silent for a while. Then he smiled a bit, sadly. Nothing. Jed said, flopping his arms down on his side. Ash was obviously confused. What do you mean by that? I mean, you said there are a lot of uses to shape aura and how to increase skills and stuff. Ash looked disappointed. I don't get it. Jed couldn't help but show a rueful smile. That's because you don't need me anymore. Ash looked at him for an explanation. Ash, you are more gifted than you realize. Did you know it takes at least 1.5 months for a normal student to just gain a aura sphere with constant practice and instruction? He said with his eyes drooping. Easily you would be able to the rest of your powers on your own. I would slow you down. Ash looked at Jed in disbelief. How on earth would Jed, his teacher, slow him down? All this training had opened brand new pathways that our hero hadn't even considered. He can anticipate when Pokémon are going to move easier. His sense of heightened that he can sense a storm coming before a cloud appears in the sky. Why the crap do you think you'll slow me down? Ash asked somewhat angrily. His gaze was hard against Jed's green eyes. Jed didn't answer straight away. Because I'm jealous. I don't understand, Ash murmured, shocked that Jed would feel this way. Jed grinned or grimaced, it was hard to tell. Because here you are, my student, with the strongest aura I've ever seen, mastering techniques only after nearly 2 months of training, and he pointed his thumb at himself. Here am I, who has been training with aura all my life, and it took me 3 months to master aura sphere by training every day. Jed walked up to Ash, shaking his head in distress. I was born with the weakest aura on my island in the past 50 years, Ash. I won't be able to keep up with you. Jed told him honestly. You know what, Jed? Ash's eyes were covered by his hair and his voice fairly emotionless. Jed looked a bit startled by Ash's sudden change of mood. However, when Ash looked up, his eyes were full of confidence. It doesn't matter if your aura is weak, and it doesn't matter if my aura is strong. What matters is that you taught me, and you were awesome at it. He gave Jed a thumbs up. You taught me a lot and you had confidence in me enough to go through it. He laughed. Not everyone can put up with me and my density all the time. A smile turned into a smirk. Thanks, Ash, Jed said. The two boys shook hands as both student and master and as friends. Ash sensed another intent though. There is another reason you have to go, isn't there? He watched the aura philosopher sigh and nod his head. Yes. I have things to do and places to be. Jed smiled, putting on his hat. I'm a trainer after all. He said with a wink. Ash understood. The call to keep moving throughout the world. It was one all people heard once in their life. Jed spoke again. And it's time I head back home. Oh, to Mary I'll write. Jed nodded. Well then I'll stop by over sometime. I want to see it. Ash said cheerily. Jed looked a bit surprised by this but then smiled in good grace. All right. Hope I see you there someday. Ash smiled back. Hey Jed. Thanks. It wasn't farewell or goodbye, they would see each other sometime. See ya later, Ash. And good luck. Then Ash suddenly remembered something real quick and caught the aura philosopher by the shoulder. Jed turned around in confusion. Hey, there is one more thing I want to ask you about. Jed turned around curious. What is it? Ash looked serious. What do you think of legendaries? This was a vague question. Any normal person would ask this question as a simple opinion poll. Jed, however, knew what was up. He knew all about the battle brains, final test. So he chose his words carefully. Well, they are Pokémon, are they not? Obviously Ash didn't know what Jed meant by this but nodded anyway. So, he said, carrying on. What's the difference between the legendaries and our Pokémon? Well, they're more powerful and they control a lot of stuff, and, Ash tripped over his words. Pika. Spinda. Both boys' partner Pokémon came running up to them. Pikachu perched himself on Ash's shoulders while Spinda flopped on Jed's head. So how is that any different from a little panda shooting aura from his paws? Jed petted Spinda. Or, he added, leaning over to pet Pikachu on his cheeks, who squealed with delight. A small little mouse shooting lighting from his cheeks. He saw that his student was finally getting his point. Everyone needs a friend, right? And if no one becomes their friend and show them good, then all they will see in others is evil. The little blue panda on his head nodded in agreement. Spinda. Everyone needs a friend, Ash repeated. Pikachu crossed his arms, acknowledging the wise words said. Finally Ash smiled, getting the meaning. Thanks, Jed. He called out to him. Oh, and come visit me when we open up my battle facility. His friend grinned back. No prob, Ash. With a two-finger salute he was off, waving back towards his newly made friends, who waved back. Finally, when the aura philosopher was no longer visible on the dirt path, Ash looked at Pikachu with determination in his eyes. I know what to do. By mid-afternoon Anabel was attending Gyarados. This involved from scrubbing his scales to just simply talking to the great beast. It was the easiest way of getting to know someone, and while she did this, the salon maiden casually talked to him about Ash. And though the great beast was wise in his own way, Gyarados still hadn't gotten out much of the Tojo Falls. Still, Anabel appreciated this and told her newly acquired water type that she would take him on an adventure if he wishes. Jed had come to say goodbye to her abruptly, though promised he would visit her again. When she asked about Ash's aura lesson, she got the cryptic reply of, "He has you." Anabel from previous experience knew this was Jed's way of telling her to not worry. So she wouldn't. Anabel went to NT and Raikou for advice. They only had a little more to offer. They said they could understand Ash's reasoning of being reluctant to take on the destiny of being a legendary trainer. It is a great burden to represent humanity to a legendary like the previous Frontier Brains. And yet she was surprised to see Ash with Pikachu having a blast of a time helping the fellow sailors and port hands on the docks at Cobalt Port. The duo waved at her with bright smile on their faces. Ash still was in that black shirt and raggedy jeans that he borrowed from Marin. He ran over to her and without much hesitation hugged her, in public no less. Ash. She was blushing and if not a little confused. When they came apart, Anabel wanted to know what was up. Ash just smiled and said in his triumphant voice. I solved it, of course. Pika. The electric mouse Pokémon agreed, pumping his little fist up. The elegant purple eyebrow rose. Solved what? His infectious happy attitude and hug had slowed down her normally processing brain. Ash looked around to make sure none of the workers would overhear them. About the legendaries, of course. He whispered seriously. Oh. She was really slow today. When she realized what he really said, her head snapped to attention. What do you mean? I thought you were overwhelmed by. She made a gesture to emphasize her point. All of this. Ash scratched his head a bit sheepishly. Yeah, well, I talked with Jed. And he ironed out a few things. Now all I need to do is just, he emphasized, clear my mind. He pointed to a ship that was docked. Working seemed like a good idea. Besides, the sailors offered a free lunch that was pretty good. Anabel smiled gently, glad that Ash was fitting in. Do you think Pallet Town will be a bit like this when I start bringing in battle participants? Ash asked curiously. Both his and Pikachu's head were tilted just a bit sideways, making it a very cute-like fashion. Anabel thought about it a second. She never really considered what the impact of the battle frontier in Little Pallet Town. Ever since she arrived at Cobalt Port, the visitors and tourism have gone up, making the seafaring town highly prosperous. I guess, she finally said. It depends on who you bring. What sort of attractions you have there. Ash scratched his head in embarrassment, thinking about his town. Not much. There's Professor Oak's lab, but that's about it. He turned away, blushing shyly. I guess you could call the town a country sort of place, which would make me a bit of a country boy. Anabel laughed. Hey, that's alright. Maybe you'll make a difference or maybe you won't. Just so long as the community supports you, then it should be fine. Ash thought about when he first became a trainer and all those who showed up were only his mom and her friends. But then again, it was only a year and a few months after that he was given the nickname, the Pride of Pallet Town. Pikachu. The electric type agreed with Anabel, knowing that support is all that Ash needed to help him get settled in his new position. Ash grinned in his usual confident way, giving a thumbs up. Yeah, you're right. He was back to his old self. But now what do I do? He asked. It was obvious he was referring to his last test of the legendaries. Though he was a bit better on the concept, some extra help would be nice. I would say, talk to Noland. That is the main reason he came here after all. She beckoned towards her cottage where he might be. Ash thought about this, thinking it was strange for his mentor to tell him to go someone else. Why him? She gently shoved him forward in that direction. Because it would be good for you to get more acquainted with the other brains. He caught a gleam in her eyes. Besides, I want to visit Raikou and NT some more if you don't mind. Our hero had a funny feeling that she was leaving something awesome out. Noland caught sight of Ash and Pikachu and raised his glass to them. Hey Ash and Pikachu, how about some citrus berry juice? Pika. The starter rushed to grab a small glass from Noland. Ash followed lead. Sure. Drinking the juice with gutso. It was now mid-afternoon and very hot and humid, though not to the point it previously was. Most Pokémon had taken to shade in order to avoid the harsh sunbeams. Ash and Noland have been doing their labor. Ash felt somewhat close to Noland even after all the time apart. During the initiation, Noland's more kid-like attitude made it easier for the two to talk. Chatting with the Battle Factory head felt more like talking to someone his own age, especially when it came to Pokémon. So Anabel tells me you're here to see if I'm ready. Ash said casually, sitting down. His tone was neither happy nor angry, merely curious. Noland laughed a little. Yep. She tells the truth. You okay with that, kid? Our hero paused in reflection. Pikachu had found a digit to play tag with, leaving the citrus berry juice forgotten. The Pokémon playing together was very innocent. It was easy to forget the power they held. So am I ready? Noland thought for a while. Well, if you asked me earlier today, I would have said no. When Ash shot him a glare, the elder man put his hands up defensively. Hey, you were the one mopping around. And it really appeared to me and Anabel that you would not be up to the task. Yeah, you're right, I was. Ash huffed. But now, he turned to Noland. I feel like I understand what you're doing now. Why you guys do it? Noland quickly observed the boy. Okay. Now I say you're ready for the test. Ash smirked. But there's more to it, isn't there? Noland congratulated Ash with a throat-spewing thud on his back. You're catching on. Ash spit out his citrus berry juice, coughing, nearly choking on it. Despite of this, Noland kept talking. During this week the skuntank hits the fan. Why? Ash kept coughing. Me and Anabel are going to train you and your Pokémon like no other for the rest of this week. By the time we're done with you, you'll be more than ready and more sore than you would have ever thought you could be. Ash felt his eye twitch when Noland said like this as was a good thing. Pikachu had walked over with the digit, both covered in dirt and grass. Seeing his trainer in such an odd state and Noland looking like he had a birthday, electric type couldn't help but wonder what had happened. 7 days later, all the way in Cerulean City. Calm and Dawn. We need to go. Barry yelled at the young girl who rather would pay attention to the products of a berry powder stand than Barry. Give me a minute. Dawn snapped at her friend. She turned back to the elder man who she was currently bargaining with. Now what did you say about what this Barry would do? The man with a burly mustache happily continued to swindle the young lady to buy his products. Why, this one, dear lady, would help make a vitamin that would increase your Pokémon's. Barry. Put me down. Dawn, we're going now. Barry dragged his friend away, kicking and screaming away. The girl huffed in irritation, knowing Barry was right that they had to get going. They had to reach Vermilion City in the next few weeks for a conference for Dawn and a gym battle for Barry, right after, not counting the fact that Barry wanted to challenge the gym leader in Cerulean City first. This was going to be his first gym battle in Kanto, and needless to say the blonde trainer was more than impatient. There it is. Barry yelled to Dawn, who he was still dragging behind. They both looked at the gym, seeing it was obviously a water-type gym leader. The building was covered in seashells and coral while showing off water types on 3D plaster across the building. This only served to further hype up Barry. Yes. I'm finally here. Gonna become the Kanto champion in no time. Right, Don? He turned to his friend. She was still brushing off the dirt from her pink skirt and no less brushed him off. Sure, whatever. This had a dramatic effect on the boy's ego. Ah, Don. Where's your spirit? Barry complained. A Pokeball light showed and Piplup tried to put in his own 2 cents. Pip pip. The penguin Pokemon started to scold Barry. Geez. Everyone hates Barry. He put his hands up in defense. Dawn seemed satisfied by this, scooping up her water starter and headed off to the gym. Now we can go on. Barry trudged behind her with tears. Inside was not too different from the outside, however it was very noticeable that most of the water-type Pokemon on depicted were majority of Kantos and appeared only a very Johto Pokemon on here was well. So why this gym looks like it's trying to submerge itself into the sea? Dawn asked out loud. Barry turned to her like she was stupid. Well duh. That's because the gym leader here is a water-type user. Sheesh, Dawn, get with the program. Dawn couldn't help but roll her eyes. She didn't get Pokemon trainers sometimes with their constant need to battle. Sure, coordinators battled each other, but it was just one more way to show off your Pokemon. She decided to humor him and drive him a bit more crazy. But don't you mainly use a water type yourself? How will Empoleon even help? Barry immediately turned to her in rage. Isn't obvious? He screamed and it echoed louder through the empty halls of the gym. He is also a steel type. Whoever owns this joint is never going to suspect my completely unorthodox method to underhand his technique. He was absorbed in his own sure-to-come victory. He failed to see his friend and her Pokemon deadpan in lameness. Sure, whatever. Pip pip. They came around the corner with Barry further yelling out triumph he had not yet completed. Yeah, I'm totally going to kick his. Who's he? Barry stopped in mid-sentence as a hot older girl showed up from the gym doors wearing nothing but a swimsuit and a jacket. She was dripping wet from what looked like a recent swim. The young man had his jaw dropped in what he thought was a really smoking-looking woman. He did indeed look like a total idiot and couldn't utter a single word. Luckily for him, Don was already on the rescue to save his behind from totally humiliation in front of the gym leader. Hi there. My name is Don and this here is my friend named Barry. Nice to meet you, Misty. The ginger said cheerily. She's wearing her heart gold and soul silver outfit. She shook hands with Don. I assume your friend over there wishes to challenge me. Yep. That's correct. Right, Barry? Barry was still unconsciously drooling. Misty smiled a bit sadly. Well, I'm sorry to say this, but the Kanto League right now is closed. This snapped Barry out of his comatose state. Hot. Both girls cringed at the volume. You're not from around here, are you? All of Kanto is notified when the Kanto League is inactive. We won't start again until 3 more months, she smiled a bit. Why do you think the gym is so quiet? Barry stuttered, trying to find a good reason, but frankly the truth was that he simply didn't notice. Then again, how can you notice other noises when your voice is the loudest? Poor Barry slumped his shoulders in defeat. So quiet was he you wouldn't think it was the same guy. Dawn tried to cheer him up. Hey, no need to worry, she said, patting him in comfort. We always have things to do. I'm sure some unofficial gym would be happy to battle you. Well, the Orange, Johto and Hoenn League are open. But hey, since you came so far, how about I treat you to lunch? Misty felt sorry for poor kid. He reminded her of another certain hot-blooded trainer that she was friends with. Misty got dressed. The three headed down to the Pokemon Center. Barry wolfed down his lunch while Misty and Dawn talked normally, both having a talent to ignore another similar attitude with another boy. So where are you from? Misty started off right away. I mean, you obviously not from here. She looked at Piplup. I've never seen that Pokemon before. What type is it? Piplup squirmed in happiness at the attention. Oh, this is Piplup, my starter. He's a water type, she said proudly. Misty's eyes brightened. Oh wow. That is so cool. Where is he from? We come from a bit a ways. It's a region called Sinnoh. Dawn said. We just came to Kanto. Sinnoh. Misty recalled hearing the word about a year ago. Oh, I had a friend who challenged the league. Who was that? Barry said with his mouth stuffed with food. He probably wasn't that strong if I've never heard of him. Misty have mischievous wink. Now I wouldn't say that. He's sort of a local celebrity around here. So far he's been in a lot of regions laughs and several times almost made it to the top. For once Barry considered. What's his name? Maybe I battled the punk once. He managed to say after swallowing a whole thing of pumpkin seed bread. His name is Ash Ketchum. There was a silence in the air right after she said that. Dawn and Piplup had the same exact shocked look on their face while Barry had all of his jaw hanging down all the way open. Misty was more or less confused. What? We know him. Piplup. The two humans and Pokémon yelled simultaneously. So loud were they that Misty wasn't sure she heard right. What was that you said? I swear I just heard the name. Ash Ketchum. Barry interrupted her yelling. It figures he wouldn't tell me of this beautiful girl, that jerk. Wait till I get my hands on him. Piplup. Off. Barry was temporarily knocked unconscious by Piplup, who both he and Dawn were embarrassed by his outburst. She quickly turned to Misty to explain. Yeah, I met Ash when I first started out, was a coordinator. So yeah, I traveled with him and there we met with my old friend Barry, who really likes to battle Ash. Oh. It dawned, no pun intended, to Misty that Ash had gone on this whole entire adventure with this girl. In a whole new place that Misty didn't really know about. Sure, she heard from Professor Oak and the occasional Gary of the brand new Pokémon existing in Sinnoh, but until now it never really hit her that Ash had made a lot of other friends there. I guess you guys had a fun time then. Despite of being dense, he certainly has a magnetic personality, right? Oh, I know, right? He makes friends with every person and Pokémon crossed our way. Even Barry here, who wanted to dislike Ash, eventually soften up. Misty started at Barry with indifference. Let me guess, a rival then. Barry, who was now suddenly conscious, leapt to his feet. Yeah, I'm his arch rival. Me and Ash had faced of multiple times and faced against my superior Pokémon. Ash beat Barry. Dawn said. Lup Pip. Piplup nodded in confirmation. Barry deflated like a balloon, leaving a trail of gloom behind him. Dawn was ignorant of this and continued to unintentionally rub salt in his wounds. Yeah, he didn't even get to face Ash in the finals. Wait, hold on a second. Something had just occurred to Misty that had been very obscure until now. The Sinnoh League is over. Yeah. Dawn was unsure. Who, and just how long ago did it end? Barry turned from his gloom, still defeated. Way over 2 months by now. Boiling hot rage washed over Misty, the trainers backed up in fear. Ash Ketchum. She yelled even louder than Barry. You're going to pay for not letting me know you're here, you jerk. Dawn and Barry cowered together, wishing to know how on earth Ash evoked the wrath of this very menacing girl. At the same time, in Torjun Falls. Achoo! Www. Ash laid sprawled on the ground, his limbs aching from Nolan's and Anabel's signature, training initiates for the battle of their lives exercise program, affectionately called Tibet Lep, pronounced _T-Bot Leap, for the sole reason that the acronym was completely useless. Ash had grew to quickly hate that word, as it involved all of Ash's under-leveled Pokémon to face very higher-level Pokémon and his high-level Pokémon against many high-leveled Pokémon. His Pokémon have all been thoroughly wrung out of all their strength, energy, and willpower to continue any further. It had been 7 days of pure comma. Ash didn't think he was allowed to say that word, but you know what he means. All his Pokémon have a similar position to him, laying on grass, rocks or whatever, not moving and faintly breathing. You would think this was a graveyard, besides the occasional moans and agonizing breaths uttered by the residents. Pikachu was right next to him, already passed out with a few stay sparks loosely coming out. Ash glared his blue eye at two silhouettes against the sun standing above him. With all his strength he uttered, "Am I ready?" Anabel turned to Nolan with a smile on her face. She was covered in dirt and bruises just like her companion, yet not nearly as bad as Ash. Yep. You're defiantly ready. Ash heaved a sigh of relief. Great. And then, like his partner, he passed out. Egens Among Us. Part 2. Delibird. Noland was the first spot the delivery Pokémon and gave Ash and Anabel the heads up. Anabel narrowed her eyes. Must be Tucker's. I wonder what he wants. The Delibird landed right in front of Ash and Pikachu and presented to them a large brown package. Deli. He pushed it forward for the human to take it. The trainer took it warily. It wasn't that he didn't like Tucker, however, Ash was not too keen on being a living dress-up doll. He turned for an opinion from his girlfriend. It was still weird to say, but Anabel was too busy petting the delibird, telling him he did a good job. With a quick little salute, the ice-flying type took off to the skies with his job done. Well, open it, Nolan said happily. Tucker just doesn't give out presents to anyone. That's what I'm afraid of. Ash murmured quickly, only Pikachu heard. Pie. His ears flopped down. Ash quickly did open the box and was surprised to immediately see what was on a stack of clothing, a bright red cap. Gingerly he lifted it up to observe it. It was the same traditional red he always wore, yet instead of the Pokémon League symbol it contained the Battle Frontier symbol. A small letter came out underneath it. Oh wow, Ash. Anabel said, looking at the hat from behind him. Opening the letter, Ash grinned broadly at the contents. Hi Ash. This is your mother here. Anyway, I heard from Scott your final test is coming up, and as your mother I had the right to know what that is. I know it will be tough for you and you too, Pikachu, but I believe you boys to be both strong. You've come such a far way in such a short time. But I know as you do that you wouldn't do as well without the appropriate attire, especially without a hat. So I whipped you up a pair to represent your growth and asked Scott to take it to you. I hope you enjoy them. Love, Mom. P.S. Anabel, you take care of my Ashy boy while you're on his journey. Make sure he doesn't do anything reckless. As you know by now, he has a knack for getting into trouble. Behind him, Anabel smiled at the note Delia had left for her. She also saw Ash's eyes widen at the last part, then shifted to her as if to say, don't say anything to Nolan. And in good grace Anabel kept quiet for his sake. Wow, some new duds Perfect timing. Nolan said, checking the contents. He handed them back to Ash. If I were you I would put them on soon. We leave tomorrow for Vermilion City. That and you need to pick out a team of your choice to help you. Anabel added. Now that all your Pokémon are pretty well set, I suggest going for an angle of versatility. Ash nodded seriously. Yet Pikachu bugged him, pointing to the new cloths to encourage his trainer to try them on. Pikachu knew that Ash had been bummed out since he lost his old cloths, so having the hat would defiantly improve overall morale. Ash instantly understood. Yeah, you're right. Hey Anabel, I'm going to be a while. Anabel smiled. Take your time, Ash. You have all day after all. I know you'll do your best. It was a simple encouragement, yet Ash felt a small bout of heat rise to his cheeks. This time a small smile came across. He was growing used to this type of thing and he was slowly growing to really like it. He guessed it was just simply adapting to a relationship. Pikachu led Ash to the cottage all the way up to his room. And in less than 1 minute Ash really did look like he was ready to become a battle brain. With his red cap having the Battle Frontier symbol in front of it, he also had a black shirt with 3 red triangles pointing to the center, a blue sleeveless jacket with a Pokeball on it. Blue and red fingerless gloves, dark jeans and red shoes. Ash felt like he was about to head on a brand new journey. Hi Pika Pie. The electric type voiced his approval over the new duds. And Ash gave a big feral grin towards Pikachu, now fully rearing up to go out for the battle of his life. Already he could feel his blood just rushing at the thought of the challenge and to prove his worth. Pika. The mouse Pokémon jumped on Ash's shoulder, running out the doors, excited to pick out the ultimate team for the legendary battle. His team were already lined up to be hand-picked by their trainer and friend. And by passing each one and observing their abilities, a flood of memories to how he met each of them. Bulbasaur, the brave grass type who protected other Pokémon from abusive humans. Ash had met him 4 years ago, back when he was still very naive about the world. Kingler, the water type. Though not used much, Kingler had proven more than enough times to make up for it, showing that bonds can transcend distance. Muck, the poison type, who Ash, despite of his inexperience, taught kindness and friendship, and Muck had shown his dedication since then. Bayleaf, the grass type who started out as a Chikorita and was still as feisty. Quilava, the fire type who was a little Cyndaquil with a fire problem, not only fixing it but improving his power further by evolving on his own will. Turris, the normal type, who any he called upon served their trainer faithfully. Snorlax, who was also a normal type, who Ash used his nature to be an asset to battle rather than a hindrance most trainers would assume. Heracross, the bug and fighting type, who had a strong affinity for sap and sweets. Totodile, the water type, who was fun-loving and energetic. Noctowl, his Johto flying type, who served him well in the league and against special attacking foes. Donphan, the ground type, who he raised from a baby, teaching Ash responsibility at a young age that he needed to learn. Swellow, the Hoenn flying type, with determination to fly not only through the league but to the battle frontier. Sceptile, the grass type, from a Trico became the main powerhouse throughout over a year. Corphish, the rascal water type, he brought smiles to everyone's face. Turcole, the fire type, who had a heart of gold. Glalie, the ice type, who was a bit like Ash as a Snorunt, like Quilava overcame his own problems and grew more powerful as well. Staraptor, the Sinnoh flying type, the first partner he had in the new region and show vigor time and time again. Torterra, the grass ground type, as Turtwig encouraged his trainer despite of the fallings. Infernape, the fire fighting type, despite of a more traumatic past, opened his heart to Ash. Weasel, the water type, as passionate for battle as Ash was. And Gabite, the dragon ground type, that despite of shortcomings in young age showed support in the tough times, especially in the battle with Darkrai. And Ash thought back to some of the Pokémon he does not have with him, Gliscor, Primeape, Butterfree, Squirtile, Charizard and Pidgeot. But as a trainer he had perfected all of his team. Ash didn't know how to choose at first, but after what these 2 months have taught him is to follow his heart, his brain and especially his instincts. And so from all these great warriors he had to pick 6. Pikachu was obviously the first. His starter is not only powerful but had the experience of dealing with all the legendaries Ash himself had dealt with. Next was Bulbasaur. Ash needed another veteran in his team. Bulbasaur would offer status and physical attacks. And the fact that Bulbasaur battled with Brandon helps reaffirms Ash's beliefs that he will aid in the legendary battle. Snorlax would offer some advantage as well. All legendaries are powerful. Snorlax's sheer power would counter this and being a normal type, won't be open to most attacks. Ash's other choice was a bit strange. Glalie. It was a strong urge in his gut that he should bring his ice type with him too, wherever he was going. Ash chose Gabite for the same reason. It was a wild feeling inside of him that was so strong it sounded like thunder to his mind. As for the last one was hard decision. All his Pokémon equal in strength but he felt something missing, a hole in his heart. And of course like any good trainer, he voiced his concerns with his Pokémon. "What do you guys think?" he said sitting down in front of them. Everyone looked at each other for an answer however none came up. They were just as concerned as their trainer and could feel the missing link in the team. It was so strong, the others knew that not one of them could fill the position otherwise the team would be unbalanced. "Maybe I should reorganize my team," Ash muttered to himself. Sceptile shook his head. He knew that there would always be a missing link. Besides if Ash felt like he needed this team to begin with then they should stick to it. Swellow. The flying type agreed. This was going to be a legendary battle. They would need to have a versatile range in order to combat whatever come their way. The Pokémon began to talk among themselves to see how they could fix this commodity. This made it hard to concentrate for Ash. And when he was going to tell them to be quiet, all went still. Ash felt a strong presence in their midst. The Pokémon found themselves unable to speak while Ash himself felt himself unable to think, to only act. And above in the sky, gleaming down like a beacon was a rainbow. And at the end of the rainbow was Ho-Oh. All their eyes widened at the gleam of bright colors that showed across the sky and Ash began to stand. Pikachu was the first to speak. "Hi, Kachu. Pikapi." It was as clear as day to Ash what the electric type was asking. "Is he the one you need?" Yet Ash shook his head in a no. Ho-Oh wouldn't be his legendary now, that Pokémon was far out of his reach still. Ho-Oh to Ash was something special, but somehow our hero knew that if he went after Oh-Ho now then he would never reach his goal, he would be consumed by the fire of need just like. Not now. Ash tucked the unpleasant memory. However, even though he could not attain Ho-Oh there was still a connection and he knew that his was a sign. Our hero was unaware of his feet moving until the trees and grass were starting to blur as he broke out in a run. His Pokémon were close behind him, feeling the need to follow their trainer. Out of the forest and on the main road, an odd sight, a teenage boy running with a horde of Pokémon behind him. But they had to keep on moving, they had to stay in sight of the great bird and the rainbow. Something was calling them to answer them. Others saw the sign too. The Frontier Brains, a man and a girl, stared at the rainbow and both knew that it wouldn't be until tomorrow until they saw the boy again. The Aura Philosopher saw it too, though he had to look, to spy on the boy that followed. And signed at the knowledge just gained. Ash had never felt so free. All his muscles working together to propel him only forward and never back, never guessing. He felt his Pokémon, his teammates, his friends, flying, running, swimming behind him, feeling the need, the wild instinct to run and to follow. Our hero has always liked nature more than the cities, being raised in a very small town. In the wild, and especially as he grew older and more sufficient, it was a lot more easier to lay down in the grass than go and bother to find a Poké Center. He loved walking through the woods and climbing up trees. He felt so much more at home than anywhere else among the wild. It was similar to a battle, blood rushing and your body working, however this was calmer, smoother, and gave him time to relax his spirit as he had stopped thinking and let his eyes keep up to the rainbow in the sky. They went past the Toho Falls, through the wet caves, and desperate to get into the sunlight to see the legendary again and not lose sight. They ran for miles and for hours until the sun was almost over the horizon. And the rainbow grew dimmer and dimmer as to show the short journey was near its end, for now. And as it got dimmer, the fatigue came more and more evident to the group. They slowed down until finally Ho-Oh had disappeared in the setting sun and Ash and his Pokémon sat down in order to rest and do all they could from fainting over. Ash was very thankful for his new hat and cloths today. They were made of very light material and allowed him to cool off a lot easier than anything else. Sweat trickled down his brow as his brain started to function again. It took several minutes to get a clear look at their surroundings. Obviously they weren't in Kanto, there were far too many trees and the grass was much more wild. Johto, he instantly knew despite of how many years since he's been here. But the impact of going to a new region was still fresh in his mind. How did we run this far? He couldn't answer, his thoughts were still too hazy. Slowly he and his team started to get up. The flying types taking the longest. Everyone was quiet except for the forest where the wild Pokémon began their songs for the night. A small growl filled the air and everyone smiled seeing it was Swellow's stomach. It was clear that while they did not worry they were in a different region right now, they had to find food in order to regain the energy needed to head back. Brock's survival lessons kicked in Ash's mind, analyzing the soil to see where the berries might grow. Snorlax was a huge help, sniffing around and pointing deeper in the forest for food. Soon there was a small grove with a spring-like waterfall in it with other Oran, Pecha, and dare I say, the elusive Enigma berry, all in one place. The only problem was that the waterfall was clogged up by a spiraling mess of thorny vines. This didn't bother Ash as he smiled at Snorlax, who was already on his way to munch on one of his favorite meals. Soon Snorlax's massive belly was full and the water was flowing normally. The team took their own time between eating the berries and drinking the cool fresh spring water. The water felt great as it splashed against his face, clearing his mind of his exhaustion. Instantly he felt rejuvenated and aware, but he had to wonder what was the purpose as to why Ho-Oh lead him here. What was in Johto? Ash was very grateful that Toho Falls were the gateway between the two regions. Munching on a Oran berry, our hero tried to recall anything in Johto that might be of assist. He called his Johto Pokémon to him, Donphan, Totodile, Bayleaf, Quilava, and Heracross, to what they could remember anything that might have happened during their time with him. He deadpanned seeing that Quilava was already asleep with a snot bubble, Heracross trying to get to Bulbasaur Bulb to find the sap, and Totodile rolling around in the small stream, completely ignoring their trainer. Only Bayleaf seemed to hear him and instantly belly-flopped him and began to cuddle her face next to his. Ash grimaced when she did this, his soreness and sprained muscles not fully recovered since his intense training experience. All right, Ash finally said once he had enough. Surprisingly he had the strength to gently push his Pokémon off him. He tried to the best of his ability to understand any of Bayleaf's callbacks to the Johto region in their travels. Nothing in particular came to mind for the grass type, and she was just as clueless as her trainer to just what to do. Ash signed more or less, and seeing how it was getting darker, his Pokémon instantly began to seek out some shelter for the night. Sceptile, being a loner, sought out a tree to lay on separate from everyone else, yet keeping a watchful eye. His other Pokémon were more than content curling up around each other underneath a rock covering. Ash somehow found himself in the middle, squeezed between his team as they snuggle in closer to their dear trainer. And despite how uncomfortable with all the varying hides of his Pokémon, Ash was comforted by the fact he knew which texture belonged to which Pokémon. Pikachu, of course, as the honorary starter, got the to lay down snuggly on his chest. And it wasn't before long before the snores of Pokémon and one human were heard by the wild. Earlier today. Wow, you're really determined to see Ash, aren't you? Barry was marveled at the fact that they have been traveling for a day now to see Ash in his hometown with their newfound friend. Well, in Dawn's case this was, for Barry it was more of an infatuation. Misty. Yep, she said, trailing on the path to Pallet Town. While Cerulean City wasn't too far away from Pallet Town, it would take at least a week if not more to reach there simply by foot and on a solid path. Right after Misty's declaration of vengeance against poor Ash Ketchum, the gym leader packed up and locked the gym doors in less than 20 minutes flat. You could practically see the steam coming out of her ears, that's how mad she was. You see, if you haven't seen a dear friend, who you may or may not have a thing for, in at least well over a year, would you not be mad too if your friend did that? Misty had a perfectly rational reason to come and clobber Ash Ketchum for being a dense idiot and not being considerate at all. She would have a word with Tracy too. So I guess you met Ash when your bike got fried. Dawn was shocked that she deducted that so easily. How did you know? Misty couldn't help but smirk. He did the same to me the first time we met. Dawn looked amazed at the similarities between them and walked in silence, thinking about this odd situation. So, Misty. Barry asked nervously, trying his best not to sound like a loser or a jealous, he was not jealous, friend of Ash. How long have you known Ash? His main motive was to get to know this gorgeous babe so that he might borrow her from Ash. Misty almost barely heard Barry at all, still miffed after a day. Oh. She has started to calm down though. Well, I've known him since the beginning of his journey. She started to laugh a bit. He was a complete newbie and didn't know anything at all. It is a surprise he managed to get this far even with my help. So he was just lucky after all. Barry proclaimed loudly. Misty barely heard him once again. But then again, it's quite amazing on some of the accomplishments he made even for just being a kid. And once again Barry flopped down in embarrassment, trying to recover. Yeah. He certainly shows his stuff. That statement is by no way meant to suggestive, get your mind out of the gutter. Dawn, even though 12 years old, sighed at this. You're pathetic, she said. Shish. Barry tried to hush her up in case Misty might hear. No, I'm not. She just knows my rival better than I do. I want to know his weakness. She and Piplup both sweat dropped. Sorry you are. Piplup. In Barry's favor, Misty did not hear them, however was farther ahead of them than a few moments. Hey, you guys are going to get left behind if you don't keep up. Misty smiled saying this. She was very glad they weren't getting lost like normal. Though because of this she wasn't as used to traveling on the road, it was a bit strange not going on a random adventure in every other day. However, it was getting a bit late. It was a bit hard on them, and her, to sleep on ground with mats again. So it was best they find a Pokémon Center around. Luckily there should have been one a mile away according to Dawn's map on her wrist device. Misty didn't know much about the oncoming technology. Apparently Kanto was a bit behind times, but that was to be figured. Barry was fascinated with all the Kanto native Pokémon around. Dawn had to drag him away from capturing them, stating he already had a full team. A surprise waited for them inside the center. Zoe. Dawn called out, seeing her red-haired friend. Said redhead turned to the trio. Dawn. Hey Dawn. She ran up to her fellow coordinator. Hey, I haven't seen you since Sinnoh. Yeah, I know, right? You're probably here for Vermilion City Conference. She assumed. Zoe nodded before realizing the other guest. These friends of yours? Oh yes. Dawn gestured to the other two. You know my old friend Barry. You probably met him in Sinnoh. He's here for the Kanto League. Zoe had to raise an eyebrow. Wait, isn't the Kanto League closed? Barry slumped, being reminded of his mistake. No need to rub it in. He murmured once again in a slump. Dawn disregarded him. And this is my new friend Misty. She's a gym leader and also friends of Ash. Zoe seemed not surprised. Seems like nearly everyone in this world knows that kid. A spark of realization. Hey, isn't Ash from Kanto? Yep. Misty said. Apparently he's been hanging out here for over 2 months and never said anything to anyone else. Are you his girlfriend? Zoe asked bluntly before she realized what she said. A red blush came across all the female faces. Misty stuttered a bit but was mature enough to recover. Oh, no, not really. She laughed a bit. I mean, what on earth gives you that idea? Zoe laughed too, embarrassingly. Yeah, I don't know. No clue at all. Yeah, no need to worry. Dawn tried to change the subject. So Zoe, are you doing anything right now? No. Zoe's face along with the others was starting to lose the red. How about you come with us? I'm sure once we meet Ash, he'll shows us all the cool battle spots while we wait for the conference. Hey, that sounds like a good idea. Zoe smiled. Alright, you mind me tagging along? She asked Misty, who she rightly assumed to be the leader of this journey. Misty did consider it. It was a bit discerning how Zoe blatantly asked that particular question, yet Zoe seemed like a nice girl and it has been a while since she traveled with more girls than boys in a group. Yeah, sure. But, the gym leader winked. You gotta show me any water-type Pokémon that you have. It was past the middle of the night when Ash opened his eyes. His vision for some reason quickly adapted to the darkness. The only sounds were the snores of his Pokémon all curled up in a sleepy ball. For some reason, the human's body was full of energy and couldn't sleep. With some effort he managed to get Pikachu off his chest and slide of the pile of Pokémon without waking them up. He quietly walked away from his group. Maybe somewhere in his mind it occurred to him that it was a bit dangerous to wander the woods alone at night, however the fresh cooler air of Johto excited him, made him want to move. Ash let him instincts guide him in the dark. And while he did this, it was pretty neat to see the stars so clear at night. Looking hard, Ash could make out the Mew constellation, the flying Gyarados, and his favorite, the running Pikachu. And while he made out the stars, Ash had wandered to one of the mountains nearby. Energy was still going through him and it would do no good to try to sleep with all of it, so he might as well use it up. Ash was a lot like a Mankey or any other rock Pokémon in his skill in climbing up the rocky ledges. He was careful not to get his clothes too dirty, yet continued upward. The boy didn't know when he was going to stop yet kept on climbing. It was good exercise and Ash felt the unnatural energy ebbing away. Yet something kept telling him to keep going. Go and go until he found something. There was a ledge where Ash saw some green on it and a cave way in the back. It looked relaxing and Ash felt compelled to sit there for a while longer looking at the stars. It reminded of his experience with Jirachi and Max and May. Maybe, if he wished. Ash closed his eyes and smiled towards the sky. I wish that I can find an answer, not a solution but just a hint or some advice. Arggg. I don't know what to say. Ash screamed in his mind. He sighed. Well, that wish went out of the window. He had never been good during those quiet moments. He could laugh a bit seeing how he just ruined this moment. So he just kept looking at the stars. Single quote exclamation mark single quote. Ash's ears seemed to perk. He blinked thinking he heard something, but soon disregarded that notion. Okay, now he defiantly heard something. He got up and looked directly at the cave. Now that he looked at it properly, it was sorta big. Really big. Thoom. Now the noise was echoing. And it finally occurred to Ash that something large and unknown was coming his way and he didn't have any Pokémon to defend himself with. Silently he thanks Anabel for calling Jed and thanked Jed for teaching him Aura. His eyes flared up a bit and got in the proper stance to prepare an Aura sphere. He didn't charge it, whatever was coming might be friendly. Krush. Kuruch. He could now make out a silhouette of whatever it was. It was large, spiky, and Ash gulped. It was a Tyranitar. A very big and very fierce-looking Tyranitar. Ash looked behind him and vaguely wondered if he could survive jumping off the cliff. Well, of course he could survive, however get out uninjured, yeah, not likely. The dual type was getting closer. Ash was beginning to charge the aura, but the Tyranitar stopped in front of him. It seemed to look at him expectantly, and Ash felt compelled to relax his stance. With a nod, the Tyranitar seemed to growl for something behind it. Then a small and familiar head popped out from behind the bigger Pokémon's leg. Ash nearly choked in shock. Larvitar. The rock-skinned Pokémon bounded happily to the human, happy that he was recognized. La. It tacked him with a whopping hug, making poor Ash topple over. Oof. Instantly he noticed the little Larvitar was a lot heavier than when he first hatched from an egg. Despite of this, Ash laughed. Hey, haven't seen you in a while. How you doing? Larvitar chirped happily, trying to talk about all the adventures he had with his mother by making seemingly random gestures towards him and his mother. But then he seemed to realize what he was here for and got off at Ash and went towards his mother. Ash's stomach felt like he was hit like a rock, but go figure. What is going on? He asked, getting up. The two Pokémon seemed to be talking to each other. The mother Tyranitar nodded again. Larvitar did a little hop of joy and went back to Ash. He started to nudge his pant leg. Hey, what are ya doing? More jabbing, this time higher. Oh, my belt. He looked at a set of Pokeballs, 5 of them already marked with his team he was taking with him, and one was empty. It dawned on him. You want to join me? He asked in shock. The little one nodded. Another hop. Ash looked at the mother as to ask for permission. And he could make out a smile on her rocky face. Was this supposed to happen? He thought about how weird it was that Oho lead them to Johto. Did Oho lead these two here as well? He looked down at his friend and saw the enthusiasm the Larvitar had in his bright eyes. You've certainly grown a lot, haven't ya? He smiled, petting the rock type. Alright, I'll have ya on my team. Larvitar. It looked like it was time for the little guy to say goodbye to his mother. It was then Ash felt himself in a crushing bear hug given both to him and Larvitar by the Tyranitar. It was hard to breath. But thankfully she let go, still having a smile on her snout. It was a good goodbye, so Larvitar expectantly turned to Ash for the next move. So as naturally as it came, the Pokeball was thrown in the air with the rock type leaping towards it. A red light made contact and 3 wobbles, then the defining sound of a captured Pokémon. By the time Ash picked the Pokeball up, the Tyranitar was already gone. Determination came across his eyes. This was the answer. He got his wish. His eyes were a bit sleepy by the time he got back before dawn. Shortly after his capture, Larvitar forced himself out of his Pokeball and made Ash carry him in his backpack like old times. And Larvitar was indeed heavier than last time. So it made not only the walk harder but also climbing down the mountain. Luckily he got there before his Pokémon woke up. Imagine the panic they would be in seeing that their trainer had gone missing during the night. Though Sceptile was already awake though and was near his trainer by the time Ash got in the area. However, because of his sudden appearance, like always Larvitar hardened and made Ash topple over by the sudden weight. SCEP. The grass type was confused by the new arrival and the sudden action. And it was clear to Ash too. Oh Sceptile, this is an old friend of mine, Larvitar. He decided to join our team. He took the still Pokémon out of his backpack and, with effort, held him in his arms. Larvitar, this is my friend Sceptile. He's really cool and I promise he won't hurt you. He's part of my team. The harden went away but the rock-skinned Pokémon still looked at Sceptile wearily. Ash sighed. It was going to take a while for Larvitar to get comfortable with all his Pokémon. Pikachu was the next to wake up and was very surprised to see the old friend sitting with Ash. Pikachu leapt over the pile of Pokémon and went to see if his eyes were deceiving him. The little rock type was so happy to see his old friend he also toppled over Pikachu when giving the electric type a hug. Pika. Little Pikachu couldn't even get up with Larvitar on him. Pika. He still greeted his friend. Come on Larvitar. Ash once again had to struggle to pick him up. My back is going to hurt if this keeps up. Soon enough all the Pokémon were waking up and coming to see the newcomer. Ash's comforting hand kept Larvitar from hardening, but it still made the child Pokémon very shy and suspicious. So Pikachu had the bright idea to have the Pokémon line up and greet Larvitar one at a time. The Johto team had a easier time getting reacquainted, yet the larger Pokémon were more difficult to get comfortable around. Lar. He whispered worriedly when it was Gabite's turn. Gah. Gabite. He offered a fin. Gradually Larvitar took but did not expect Gabite to take that to launch into a conversation. Apparently whatever he was saying was something that Larvitar liked. Ash remembered that based on their behavior that Gabite and Larvitar were around the same age and could get along better than others. Soon enough by complete sunrise Larvitar was more or less comfortable with them. Everyone. Ash announced and immediately the Pokémon's attention turned to him. I am going to have Larvitar on our team. I know I am adding another ground type, but I have a feeling that Larvitar can be the extra boost we need in the upcoming battle. He turned to said Pokémon. I know this is sudden, but I would like you to be part of our team for an upcoming battle. He patted the rock type. I know you don't always like fighting, but this would be very important for me and Pikachu and for everyone on my team. It was no less of a surprise when Larvitar pumped up his arms and gave a growl of determination. Everyone cheered confident in this new development. Ash cheered with them. Yeah, now we can tell Anabel too. He bit his lip because he just realized on tiny little problem and his Pokémon must have realized it too as they too shut up. You could see his pupils dilate. How are we going to get back on time? Panic ensued as Ash tried to grab his team all together as the other Pokémon rushed quickly to get back to the battle tower. But it would take hours. It occurred to Ash he was indeed going to be late, and that was one thing as a frontier brain Anabel had stressed over and over again. Don't be late. By then he was rushing ahead of his Pokémon until his sides hurt. Ah, what are we going to do? By now they would have already left the battle tower. However, he didn't notice all his Pokémon had stopped, and by the time he did he crashed into something big, brown and furry. Pika. The third time today he was knocked on his bum and Pikachu landed on the ground behind him. ARH. Wait, what the? His eyes adjusted quickly yet still couldn't believe what he saw. It was Anabel's NT and Raikou. They were standing over him expectantly. What are you guys doing here? He asked, picking up Pikachu. There was no answer when NT crashed into his legs and made Ash get on his back. Ride. A growl that seemed like a yes. Ash understood. Raikou, could you lead the rest of my team back to Anabel's? The electric legendary agreed to this and the rest of the Pokémon followed him. Right. NT, let's go. They zoomed out of the forest in a blink of an eye. NT running leaps seemed to go ever quarters of miles every time. Pikachu struggled to hang on to Ash and Ash struggled to hang onto NT in his hat. But it was fun. The wind rushing through your hair and the landscape passing by. Was this what Anabel had been doing when she wasn't around? Well, that wasn't fair. Anabel had been having fun all this time and hadn't told him. HMPH. Nearby the docks of Vermilion City. Anabel and Noland looked bored with the rest of the Frontier Brains on an outside lounge. Are you sure he's going to be here on time? Lucy asked, a bit irritated of waiting. Anabel didn't even give her fellow coworker a glance. Don't worry. He'll get here. Ash just had some things to sort out. Lucy looked unimpressed. The rest looked more or less bored. Anabel's eyes widened a bit and stood up. Ah, he's here. Everyone else stood up and sure enough over the buildings unbeknownst to the pedestrians of the city NT came with the guest of the day. NT skidded perfectly next to Anabel with a dazed Ash and Pikachu on his back. Hi Ash. Noland greeted and helped the boy down from the legendary and Anabel recalled the fire type back. Hey Noland. Hey Anabel. Hey, everyone. Ash greeted while trying to adjust staying still. Anabel gave him a slight slug. Did you get what you needed? Figures since Anabel sent her legendaries she knew about his side quest. Ash smiled. Yeah, thanks Anabel. They clapped hands together, which was a friendly gesture. Like stated before, these two weren't really about being romantic. Pikachu nearly fell off of Ash's shoulder only for Anabel to catch him. Oh poor Pikachu. Was the ride a bit too much? The electric type nodded like a spinda. Pika. Yoish. Let's get a move on. Greta called them all together. The 7 brains and the initiate went closer to the docks, and what Ash saw made his eyes widen. Are we going in that? He yelled. It was a huge cruise-like yacht with the Kanto Battle Frontier symbol on it. It was the same one on his hat. Yes indeed. Tucker proclaimed, clamping a hand over Ash's shoulder. "'Tis the perks of being a brain of value and honor. Truly people know how we contribute to the community. That, and we get paid a lot of money through merchandising," Nolan said. Ash couldn't comprehend that much money to buy something so big. "This thing is bigger than that one cruise ship I went on when I was 10. He murmured to himself. On the boat was even more amazing. The outer deck was made of light yet reinforced metal for a Pokémon battle area. Beach chairs, tables, a fruit bar. Wow. Ash's mind couldn't wait to see the inside of the yacht. This thing could hold over 100 people. Ash was amazed at this. It was so fancy. Or just several frontier brains and their Pokémon. Spencer added, smiling, seeing Ash's growing excitement. "We should wait though to release them," Lucy said, suddenly appearing next to Ash, startling him. "Wah! We should get further out to sea first." Our hero noticed that the other brains nodded, and it made him wonder for what reason. "Ah, you're all here." Scott finally seemed to arrive, coming up to the yacht. Good. Brandon huffed at his boss. "It's funny that you're the one who is late." Scott decided to humor Brandon and ask why. The 8th brain held back a sigh. "Well, here we thought you would get here before the boy, as you were in the city right next to Vermilion, and he pointed a thumb towards Ash, was a region away, yet he got here first." Scott was curious at this, looking quizzically at Ash, but said nothing. "All right, everyone ready?" This time he walked to Ash. "So, where are we going?"